Hello, welcome back again, Power App enthusiasts, to the Power App tutorial channel. Hope you guys are enjoying the new Pro series. In our last video, we worked on refactoring our model-driven app to the Pro version, and we did that by adding the foster details and the adoption details, and then labeling some of the sections in our main form. Today, we're going to be continuing by adding JavaScript web resources, and the three use cases we're going to be focusing on are going to be hideReturnedSectionDynamically, set follow-up days of adoption, and set date if empty. All right, but if you're new here, just make sure you hit that subscription button, add that notification bell so you can stay updated when we come up with new videos. All right, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so I'm in my animal shelter solution, and it still has the same properties it had, or 12 components. Before we start changing or modifying anything, I do want to introduce us to a script that we're going to be using for this tutorial. All right, so like I said, this is going to be the script we're going to be using, and it takes on the three functions. So the first function is going to be setDateIfEmpty, and what that does is it's going to set the date of arrival to today if it's empty. So for that, we're going to need the date of arrival column. The second function is going to be set follow up 6 months date of adoption. And then what that does is it's going to set get foster story to true or false if it's 6 months or more, right? So for that, we're actually going to have to create a new column called get foster story. And this is going to be a true or false column, so a choice column. And then our old columns we're going to use are going to be the date of adoption and the forever family story. We're going to utilize this in creating our full function. And like I said, the third one is going to be the hide return section dynamically. And what this is going to do is going to show or hide the tab sections based on section data. So for that, we're going to need the animal info section, we're going to need the foster section and the adoption section. And then we're going to need the shelter status and the date of foster fields to accomplish this task. So these are going to be the three functions we're going to be working on. All right. And before we start actually doing anything, let's go ahead and just create the get foster story. And after creating this, let's go ahead and grab all this information so that we don't have to keep jumping in and out of our solution and writing our code. So I'm just going to put this to the side and then go ahead and create our first column. And today we're going to be working on our animal info table. So just go straight to the table and go straight to column and click on new column. Okay, so copy and paste the column name and then add a brief description. Go. All right, so the description is to set to true if the foster story is empty and 6 months ahead of date of adoption. That pretty much encapsulates what you're trying to do. So just use a choice column, like I said, and it's going to be yes or no. A simple yes or no is fine. Leave everything else as it is and just hit save to create our new column. And once that's created, I'm just going to go ahead and grab. So when in our list, we have the get foster story. And right next to it, what we need to get the foster story. If you remember when we were working on creating our flows, we used the logical name. So we're going to use the logical names to get the details of our column. So just grab the logical name for get foster story, and I'm going to just paste it right next to our list. Okay, so in our list, we have get foster story now, the logical name. We do need the date of arrival. We do need date of adoption, foster family story, and the rest of them. So let's just go ahead and grab this right now while we're here. Let's go to date of arrival. Open the advanced section. Click on logical name, copy. I'm going to paste it right next to it. And then Next one is date of adoption. Advanced section, grab the logical name, put it right next to it. Just save it in our list. The next one is the forever family story. Go down and grab the logical name, paste it right next to it again. And then for our hide and return section, we need the shelter status. And we're actually going to come back to the shelter status later on, but for now, we just need the logical name. And the last one on our columns is going to be the date of foster. Go ahead and grab the advanced. Okay, so if we look at our list right now, we have everything we need for date of arrival, date of adoption, forever family story, get foster story. We do need the animal info section, the foster section, and the adoption section. Let's just grab that real quick. And to get those information, we need to go to our form. So click on animal info. So from the form, go to the main form and let it load. All right, so once it loads, it's going to pick up the whole entire form. For the section we need, just make sure you click on the animal info tab. So once you click on the animal info tab, just grab the name. This is what we need. So I'm just going to add that to our list. Next thing we need is the foster details. So click on the foster section, foster details section, and grab the name. Save it to our list. And last but not least is the adoption details. Just grab that and add it to our list. And with that, we have everything we need to work on our functions. All right, so let's just go ahead and start creating these functions. And there are different ways you can do this. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code to create our JavaScript files. So I'm just going to grab this, which is going to be our first function name, and open Visual Studio Code. All right, so how about Visual Studio Code, and just click on New File to create a new file, copy and paste new file. So before I do anything, I'm going to add ASD to the end of our file name, and then to turn this into a JavaScript, all you have to do is just put .js and hit enter. And I'm going to save this on my desktop and just hit create to save it. Awesome. All right. To create a function, you just need a function keyword and you need a function name. So we're going to name it with a ASD in front of it and then curly braces to complete the function. So this is going to be our function, but we need a way to actually interact with our forms. So I'm going to show you the script we're going to be using to add it to our forms. Okay, so this is going to be the script we're going to be using. So this is from Microsoft Power Apps. So Power Apps, model-driven apps, JavaScript, cheat sheets. And as you can, on the right here, there is like how to add JavaScript to your form. There's a section here that shows you how to add JavaScript to your form. You just have to open your form, select all this. We're going to walk through this. But what we really need right now is the code section. So as you can see, we're talking about form events. If you want to, I mean, increase the font a little so you can see. So if you want to work on form events, you need, it says the code to run in the form onload events. When we get into our forms, there are two events that usually happen. You either have a load event or a save event. But for each of them, you need something called an execution context and also a var form context that takes in an execution context dot get form context. So I'm just going to grab this, go back to our Visual Studio Code and paste it right here. And with this, we actually have what we can use to work with our form. So let's save that. All right, so if we go back to our sheet, for set dates if empty, we need the date of arrival and the animal date of arrival. So I'm just going to grab that and put that in here. And we're going to turn this into a variable. So just use var to turn this into a variable and push this down here. And now we need to get the date of arrival field. So to grab the date of arrival field, let's go back to our cheat sheet. All right, so in our cheat sheets, this is for getting form events. If you want to get current rows, you use this. For here, this is what we need right here. So we're trying to read values from our lookup field. So to do that, it says you need form context dot get attributes, and then you need the name and then get values. So let's grab this, go to our Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste it right here. So form context to get attributes, and form context is this. But for, we don't have anything called customer ID. So in that situation, we're actually going to take our logical name and paste it in there. And this is how we actually get the date of arrival field using this. So let's see, we've gotten our form context, we've gotten our date of arrival. We can actually start working on changing the values in our form field. So for that, let's create another variable. Remember, this function is supposed to set the dates to today if it's empty. So if there's nothing in there, it's going to set the date to today. So let's create a variable called today and then add new dates. And this will grab today's date. And then we're going to do a check. We're going to say date of arrival, if date of arrival is equal to null. And we can do this because date of arrival is going to be an integer, a number field. So we're going to say if date of arrival is equal to none, we're going to call the form context. And we're going to say get attributes. And we're going to pass in our logical name. Make sure you to put them in double quotes. And then after passing our logical name, instead of getting value this time around, we're going to do set value. And that's how you change the value. So you do set value to change it, get value to get the value. And we're going to change it to the variable we just created, which is today. All right. And with that, we are actually done with our first function. You can hit save to save this. This looks good. Let's work on jumping on the second function. So let's open our script again. For our script, the second function is going to be setFollowUpSixMonths. I'm going to copy that, come here to our Visual Studio Code, open a new file, and paste it in here. I'm going to add the ASD in front of it, and then don't forget to put .js. Hit save, save. So that's enter, enter. And then just like before, we start with a function name, put in the function, and then put curly braces just to remove the squiggle lines. And then I'm going to go back here and grab our execution content and form context. And then come here and paste it in here to begin our starter code. Awesome. So we have our starter code. Let's go back to our sheet again. We need all three of this, so I'm just gonna grab all three of them, come back here and paste it. All right, then convert this to a variable. So var, push this down here, var, and push this down here. For get Foster story, we don't really need this as a variable, so I'm just going to comment that out. And then now we need to grab this field. So the same thing we did with set dates if, we're just going to go here, grab this, come back here and paste it for date of adoption. Okay, so much. All right. And do the same thing for the forever family story. Yeah, but in this scenario, we're actually going to change the, so instead of date of arrival, we're putting animal date of adoption. Make sure the spelling is correct. And you can remove this side. And then I'm going to grab forever family story and also paste it right here. Make sure the spelling is correct. All right. ESD forever family story. Okay. So we have all our variables that we need to work. And so what we need to do is, remember, this function is supposed to act as a reminder to our staff members. So it's supposed to check 6 months ahead of the date of adoption. If there is no story in the forever family story, that's what this function is does. So it's going to check 6 months ahead. And if there's no story here, we need to populate with the story. So we're first going to check if the animal was adopted. So if date of adoption is not equal to null. So if the date of adoption is not equal to null, that means the animal was actually adopted. All right. So if the animal was actually adopted, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, get today's date. So var today is equal to new date. And then we're going to say, so what happens when you grab a new date as today is that it comes with everything. It comes with the dates, the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and all that good stuff. But we don't need all those details, so we're going to reset it. And that's using today.set. So we're going to do the set hours. And then in brackets, just put 0, comma 0, comma 0, comma 0 to reset all the hours, minutes, and seconds. Awesome. Then now we're going to actually create another variable called 6 months later. And 6 months later is going to grab a new date, but not just any new date. It's going to grab a new date based on the date of adoption. All right. And then we're going to carry that 6 months later variable that we just created. And what we're going to do is we're going to set it so to like 6 months ahead. So set 6 months to 6 months later dot get month and then add 6 to it. So this right here is gonna make our 6 months 6 months ahead of our date of our adoption. Now, after this, if you've ever worked with calendar fields, you know that we have different days in a month. So some months have 28 days, some months have 29 and 30 and 31. So we have to handle for those edge cases. And to handle those edge cases, I'm going to copy and paste the code that's going to resolve that. All right, so this is going to be the code that we're going to use to handle those edge cases. Let me just do a brief walkthrough so you know what's going on. So we're going to first check if the 6 months later date, so the dates we just figured out using the date of adoption, we're going to first check. If that is not equal to, so this is a double equal to, so it's an explicit check. It has to be 100% perfect. So we're checking if it's not equal to this date of adoption dot get date, then we're going to create a new variable, which is a temporary variable. That's why we're using let. That creates a temporary variable. So we're going to set that temporary variable to the date of adoption dot get date. So remember, this is going to be a moving target. The date of adoption is going to change every day that passes, right? So it's going to be a moving target. So if we get to 6 months later and these two are not correct, then we're going to create a new variable and then set this value to the original day and then pass it to our original set 6 months later. So 6 months later will now become date of adoption. That's what this does. Then for other cases, like if it's like 28 days, 29 days, and 31 days, what we're going to do is we're going to check if the 6 months later dot get date is not equal to the original day. If they're not equal, the numbers are different. What we're going to do is we're going to reset the 6 months later date. So if it's ended, if it's like September and it ends on 31, it's going to reset it to 30. And that's what this does. All right, and that's how we'll handle our edge cases. So after handling those edge cases, we then need to start working on adjusting the get Foster story. And to do that, we're going to say another if statement. I'm going to say if today, we're going to first check if today is greater than or equal to 6 months later. So if today is greater than or equals to 6 months later, and we also need to check the forever family story. So put it in a parenthesis so we can separate the logic. And forever family story is equal to null, or forever family story is equal to an empty string. Okay. So what this does is just in case somebody puts in a number in forever family story, we can check if there is a number in there. Or if maybe if someone puts in uh, a string and then they deleted it and then there's an empty space in there. That's what this checks to. For this, we're going to add one more thing called a trim to this. That's just to make our code actually check for the empty space. And then put a curly brace on the end to enter our function. And then from here, we grab form context and then get attribute just like before. And then in here, we're going to put in our get Foster story. So just grab this, place it in here. All right. And then this time around, we're going to set the value. So set value. So if you remember, get Foster story is a true or false function. So just set it to true. Okay. And with that, we are actually done with our second function. Let's see, it looks good. I'm going to hit save. And let's pull up the third one. All right. So we're done with the first use case. We're done with the second use case. Let's jump on the third one and grab the name. Go back to Visual Studio Code, create a new file, paste it in here. I'm going to add the ASD to it and then put .js and then hit enter and enter to create our file. Just like before, grab the function keyword, paste in the function name. I'm going to put ASD on the end, and then I'm just going to go back and grab the execution contents and form context since we need this, and just paste it right here and complete it with the final curly brace. All right, so we have our startup code. Let's go back to our script. We need all 5 of this. So just copy. I'm going to paste it right here. And then I'm going to convert this to variables. 1 second. Okay, so we have our variables and we have animal shelter and data foster. We know these are going to be fields. So to grab a field, we just need, so let's just go back here. We need form context, get attributes. All right, so let's just paste that in here. And we are trying to paste it in the shelter status. And we also need to paste it for the data foster because these are actually columns. So just make sure to replace the logical name after copying and pasting, and make sure the spelling is correct. You can remove this guy, grab this logical name, paste it in here, make sure the spelling is correct, and you can remove this guy. Okay, so we've gotten our shelter status and our data foster field using the get attributes function. Now we need to get our info section, our foster section, and our adoption section. Since these are not actually fields but actually sections, we need a different code to get it. So let's go back to our cheat sheet. All right, so we are back in our cheat sheet, and this is what we're looking for right here. So it says to show and hide sections, and also to show and hide tabs. So to show and hide tabs, we need the form context.ui.tabs.get. So let's just copy this and put this in our tab section. Remember, this is going to be the tab. So let's paste that in here. And that grabs the form context and creates a ui.tab.get. But for the details section, we need to replace the details. We don't have anything called details in our form. So replace details with our animal info name, so the tab name. All right, so that's to grab the tab. But now we need to grab the section. So let's go back to our cheat sheet again. Okay, and this is what we are looking for here, the show and hide sections. And so you first grab the form context UI. And then for the sections, if you want to grab a section, you have to use tab sections.get. Let's just grab this, go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste them right here for the tab section and paste it right here for the adoption section. But we don't have anything called TAB in ours. What we have is actually called animal info section. That's the name of our tab section. So just replace TAB with animal info section. Do the same thing for the adoption section. And then for the timeline, instead of timeline, we're actually going to put in our section name. Make sure the spelling is correct. Grab this one too. Paste it in there. Make sure the spelling is correct. All right. And with this, we actually have everything we need to manipulate our form. We don't really need to do anything else. So now remember, this function is supposed to hide and return section dynamically. So we're actually going to hide foster sections, or we're going to hide adoption sections based on details. And the details we're going to be using is going to be the shelter status and the date of foster. So for that, instead of using an if statement, this time around we're going to using a switch statement. So you can use a switch statement instead of an if statement. So instead of using if else, you can just use a switch statement. And a switch statement takes in a key. So we're going to add in the shelter status as our key. And then just put curly braces to get into our switch. And then we need to grab all our shelter statuses. So how do we do that? Let's go to our solution again. All right, so we're back in our solution. Let's go back and we're going to our animal info table, go straight to our column, and we're looking for animal shelter status. All right, so it's going to be different for everyone, but this is what we are looking for right here. So for mine, it says adopted is 1, claim for adoption is 2, claim for foster is 3. Make sure yours aligns to how your choice columns are created in your shelter status. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and grab all this and put it in my Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to copy and paste the code and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so we are back and this is going to be the switch statement and this is how it works. So case 7 for me, based on the values, says ready for foster. Case 4 says in foster home and case 3 says claim for foster. So what this does is when we get into the shelter status, we're going to check if it has foster related issues. So if it has foster related issues, which means foster, 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 what we're going to do is we're going to set the foster section, we're going to set the visibility to true. And then for the adoption section, we're going to set the visibility to false. And that's what we're going to do for the foster related issues. For adoption issues, mine says case 1 adopted, case 6 ready for adoption, and case 2 claim for adoption. For adoption related issues, we're first going to check if there's value in the date of foster. So we don't want to hide the date of foster if there's something to show. So we're going to use this to check. So we'll check if it has a date of foster information. That means there's something to display. And then we're going to say, okay, foster section, set the visibility to true. Else, if it has nothing in here, we can just set it to false, right? And then finally, we're going to set our adoption section to true because it has adoption details to display. And then the final default value is going to just set everything to false if there's nothing to display. And with that, we are actually done with our 3 functions that we are going to be creating. So let's just go ahead and bring this into our solution. So come back here. And to bring this into our solution, we go to the forms, go to the main form. All right, and it has populated. So we're going to be adding our JavaScript web resources in our form using the events tab. So we have a properties tab and we have an events tab. As you can see, there's nothing in here, but we're going to be adding it in here. But to add a web resource, we're going to use the recommended way. And that's if you come here, you click on form libraries, the one that says JS. This is how we're going to add it in. So just click on JS and click on add library and click on new web resource. All right, and then choose file. We're going to add the first one, setDateIfEmpty. So it pulled it in, it grabbed the display name, it gave it a name, and then it recognizes JavaScript, which is fine. Advanced options, you can decide to leave it as none or English. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and then hit save and publish. All right, so we grab the first one. Let's grab the other one. New web resource, just like before. Let's grab the date of adoption and put that in there. So you grab the name, recognizes JavaScript, everything looks good, save and publish. Let's grab the last one, which is the hide return section. Everything looks good. Recognizes JavaScript. Save and publish. And then we're going to add it into our form. So ASD, we give us all the ones we created and just tick it and then click add to put it in our form. And now that it's in our form, we can actually use it in events. So if you click on events now, you're going to see two sections pop up, and on save and on load. On load basically means that when you open your form, so let's say you go to the animal table and you click on an animal and the form opens, this is what's going to trigger. So it's going to trigger an event on load. That's what on load means. On save is when you open the form and then you enter details and then you click save. This is what's going to trigger. So for the on load section, we're going to be adding our date if empty because we want our form. So if you open the form and there's nothing in the dates of arrival field, we just want it to populate automatically. So that's where we're going to put this here. So to put that, just click on events. As you can see, it already picked the dateIfEmpty, which is fine. But we also need a required field, which is the function name. So I'm going to make sure you write the correct function name. We already have it actually, ASD. All right, and then check the past execution context as first parameter. If you remember, we're using execution context. So you have to check this and make sure, leave this checked, and then hit done. And that will pull that into our event for load. Let's go ahead and grab this order too. So event handler again, and this time around, collect the second one, which is the follow up 6 months. Put the function name, make sure it is spelled correctly. Check past execution context and hit done. Do the same thing for the last one. Hide and return section. Make sure you put in the date, the name. No, this is the wrong one. Hide. All right. Perfect. And then hit done to grab that in there. And we're going to do the same thing for the save function, but we're not going to add if empty. We're just going to add 6 months. 6 months ASD and grab the other one hide and return section hide. Here we go. Hide and return section ASD. Perfect. And then hit done. All right. So we have our 5 events here. And remember, this one is checking if the date of arrival is empty. Now I'm looking at my form. I don't even have a date of arrival, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab that date of arrival and place it here. All right, and then while we're here, let's grab get Foster story and just throw him up there. All right, so that's where our get Foster story is gonna be saved, and then save and publish. All right, so it's saved and published. Let's go back and go back one more time. And I always like to publish all customizations. So just push that, pause while that's going through. All right, so all the customizations have been pushed. Let's go ahead and do a demo. So I'm going to open the model-driven app. And we're going to pick Bella. All right, so as you can see, Bella has get Foster story, yes. And that is going to be because if we go down here, there is no details for Foster story. And the date of adoption is 2023. That's definitely more than 6 months ahead of time. So the staff is going to come in here and they're going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, we need to get Foster story. We need to reach out to Zad Ramirez. I don't know how they're going to reach out since they didn't grab the adopter email. They probably have like a phone number. Um, but also, if you notice here, apparently Bella didn't have an animal date of arrival, so he picked today's date for this purpose. All right, so everything seems to be working fine. Let's check if it's going to hide based on foster details. So that was for Bella, who's adopted. Let's switch our views to an animal that's fostered. Let's see, body. So body, right here, it says get foster story not required. And that's probably because body hasn't been adopted yet. Poor body. Anyway, so body has foster details to show, but body doesn't have any adoption details to show, and that's why it's hiding for body. Okay, and with that, we should be done with our demo. Everything seems to be working out fine. We want to do one more test. So I noticed the date of arrival changed. I want to make sure that it's not changing it haphazardly. So let's just look for an animal. Let's look for Bubbles. Bubbles still has Charlie. Awesome. All right, so Charlie, the date of arrival didn't change because it's still available. All right, so everything seems to be working fine. Awesome. And with that, we've actually come to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.